Thank you to the esteemed jury for this opportunity to present our research findings. We believe this study will not only help us, but this quantitatively validated study may pave the path for some other corporates also to decide and execute the value proposition for employees. As our topic says, satisfaction and engagement to finally inspiration is a journey indeed. And the journey covered during COVID times? Well, intriguing. Yes, COVID times described by Time magazine as world's biggest work from home experiment. So we know that COVID affected businesses, COVID affected employees, there were people working from home, there were people working for home. And of course, in that setup, when corporates encroach into the bedrooms and the living rooms, then the anxiety, low morale, low motivation, all of that were seen to be rife. To a lot of employees, it seemed as if the sociological, as if the social, emotional, psychological, financial safety net has kind of been withdrawn. That was the overall sentiment. Our strategy to combat COVID was kind of fourfold. What we did was we depended on 4 C's: collaborate, communicate, connect, and contribute. However, we were also thinking that what can we do to get to a different level? So that's where we did a lot of literature survey. We tried to find out, as per Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that after we have satisfied and engaged employees, when we try to transform them to inspired employees, what does it take? And we realized that to get employees to that top level of organizational alignment, that top pyramid, it's important that we cover both the dimensions of engagement, not only the rational ones, but the emotional ones as well. And that's where we designed a survey to research this further. We tried to check what is it that we can do to get to that level of. Our search continued for that something extra which causes that transformation. And this is where we went about the solutioning approach.
So thank you, Dr. Rima, for that wonderful precursor, preamble, prologue, setting the stage beautifully for me to articulate the research objectives and the hypothesis to be tested. And these research objectives were many in number. Where we focused predominantly on is to make sure that our journey from engagement to inspiration can be carefully crafted out and carved out by meeting these objectives. So from that standpoint, diagnosis and identification of employees' inspiration factors were paramount. But not only that, to what extent these drivers differ from that of satisfaction and engagement. As a corollary, we also wanted to understand the difference in terms of preference to work from home versus work from office in these sorts of a pandemic environment. So the hypotheses that were articulated to support these research objectives were aligned just to make sure that the conclusions that we can derive from this hypothesis testing substantiate and help us facilitate move forward in our journey from engagement to inspiration. So as you can imagine, and as was told, the entire solution design, solution architecture hinged, lean heavily on survey design. So we had to make sure that the survey design was sacrosanct. The survey design is statistically of the highest order. So from the standpoint of the phases, there were key 3 phases that were involved. And each of these phases had their milestones and targets, which were made again efficiently and clinically. So it is very clear the way from the architectural solution involved heavy lifting of each of these phases. Whether it's phase 1 on survey data integration, phase 2 on data processing, or phase 3, which involved heavy dose of analytical intervention, statistical modeling, and machine learning. From the standpoint of these surveys, they delivered in isolation as well as in conjunction, working in tandem. For example, the Employee Engagement to Inspiration Survey helped us diagnose and identify employee inspirational factors. And out of, let's say, around 34 odd factors which were in play, 18 key drivers emerged. Similarly, for the annual climate survey, helped us diagnose and identify employee satisfaction and engagement factors. Out of 42 factors and key drivers that were in contention, 8 emerged as the most important factors. ASBM survey on its own, on the other hand, helped us understand the interplay between employee commitment, employee motivation, at the nuancical level of employee profile. The fourth survey, COVID-19 work from home, helped us understand what are those attributes which are at work at the time of COVID-19 and helped us conclude on the hypothesis that there is an overwhelming majority of our employees who would prefer to work from home rather than work from office at the time of the pandemic. And in tandem, in conjunction also, these surveys delivered on some very decisive results through analytical intervention. The combination of Survey 1 and Survey 3 also gave some very interesting additional insights even beyond the research objectives. With appropriate application of structural equation modeling, path analysis, construction of the latent variables, we managed to figure out what are the key important facets of inspiration versus commitment versus motivation, and compared and contrasted them to work out some very interesting insights and results.
So like Dr. Bikramjit mentioned, somewhere in this entire journey, the biggest factor was our profound belief that to win in the marketplace, we must first win in the workplace. The rigor that we have put into the research, all of it was because of that one belief. And we are extremely happy to note that there are 5 very key factors which came out as the differentiated ones. And it helps us understand that if we focus our time and energies on these factors, then we'll be able to leverage the employee inspiration quotient much, much better. So let's look at the factors. One was, of course, the sense of stability. One was the sense of well-being, pride for the company, performance dialogues, being valued and cared for. And of course, in all these elements, like Dr. Bikramjit was mentioning, employee profile plays a key role. The demographics, of course, is a very important factor. It's a moderating factor in this entire journey. Because where an employee comes from, the educational qualification, tenure within the organization, the past experience, relationship with superiors, all of these somewhere make a lot of impact. Of course, there are employees who are intrinsically motivated, and then there are employees who are extrinsically motivated as well. But then somewhere, if as an organization, if we are able to focus on these differentiated factors, we feel that it's going to be good for us. And now I'm going to talk about one flagship intervention for us, which is going to define our journey ahead. So very clearly, when we look at these 5 factors, we realize that there is one intervention of ours, which is a Voice of Employee eConnect platform called Socially Distanced yet mentally connected. So through that, we had tried to reach out to people. We appreciated them for the work that they were doing. We shared tips and tricks of the trade as to how to be happy, how to stay happy in pandemic times. How can you bring in that balance between the work and all that stuff that people were doing at home? So we were able to bring in a lot of blend of advice through that program, and we got a lot of employee appreciation, and we intend to leverage this further. So these are the things that we are going to focus on, and we will always be grateful and indebted to this amalgamation of 4 surveys that happened, because that is now the guiding light for us. Thank you.